What's going on, everyone? I'm Bran, and I'm about to give you the bloody breakdown on the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I'm not going to lie to you all. I have been very on the fence about this movie. On the one hand, I really do cheer for this franchise to kind of have a really big moment, a really good moment again, especially after like the last two or three films in this franchise have really been misses as far as I'm considered, my opinion. And I know that that opinion is shared by some other people I've talked to within the community, but so, on the one hand, I'm cheering for this film. On the other hand, I recognize, based on the information we had going into this, what it could very well be. So I will say this before I say a single word about this film. I have to admit, it is better than I expected it to be on that one side of myself that knew what this could be. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump right in. So the Texas Chainsaw no. They got to get rid of that pesky "the." It's just Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, I guess, to clarify any incorrect thoughts here. Of course, directed by David Blue Garcia. Of course, Fede Alvarez involved. I believe he kind of had a treatment for the story. Starring Mark Burnham as Leatherface, Elsie Fisher is Lila, Olwen Fuer, I hope I pronounced this correctly, as Sally Hardesty, the returning final girl from the original 1974, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Nell Hudson as Ruth, Sarah Yarkin as Melody, and Jacob Lattimore as Dante. So I got to say right off the bat, since we're talking cast and crew here, I felt like this movie was well shot. I felt like it was pretty well paced, especially for the length of the film. It's about an hour and 20 minutes or so. But I do feel as if it was paced well. I think it was shot well. As you can see here from the poster we're looking at, this is a pretty cool image. The cinematography was actually surprisingly well done in this film, in my opinion. Maybe I had a low bar going in, but I think some of the scenes in this film are actually shot pretty damn, can I say beautifully? When we're talking about a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, I don't know. It feels appropriate. A lot of good use of rising and setting sunlight imagery in this film that really caught my eye, amongst a lot of things. So I do have to give credit where that's due. Also, I got to tell you, where this film does have that problem that a lot of slasher films have of annoying characters maybe you'd prefer just be dead, they also, a lot of them do have some redeeming qualities, unlike a lot of these type of films. So I did find that interesting. And it kind of does make up for a lack of character development in some of the characters. Not all, but some. And I do want to also throw out there, still, we're talking about a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film. If you go back and look at the original from 1974, there's not a whole lot of aspects you can tell me about those characters other than, the siblings, the Hardesties. So, I guess it's kind of difficult to make that judgment call and be a little too harsh, I guess, whenever the original, which is so celebrated, kind of suffers from that same thing to a degree. And like I said, I don't want to make it look like all the characters in this film fall flat, but there are a few that, maybe I could have learned a little bit more about before, they're gone. But yeah, I mean, overall, I did enjoy the characters generally in this film, at least the main cast, so to speak. Now, there's going to be a lot of comparisons made, and rightfully so, about this movie to Halloween 2018. In terms of the Sally Hardesty character coming back. And, I'm not going to get into any big spoilers in this thing, but I will say I think the character deserved more screen time. I think, and I'm talking about Sally here, who has been recast. Obviously, Marilyn Burns, who portrayed her in the original, passed away. But I did wish that we got more screen time for the character of Sally. This is kind of a big thing, because the character's only returned in flashes and glimpses here and there throughout the franchise. She's really never returned as a big part of the story, as a big part of the film. And, whereas I would say she's a much bigger part of this film than any other, save for the first one, obviously, I would have liked to have seen more of her on the screen. But, getting back to the point here, there's going to be a lot of people making comparisons about this to Halloween 2018 because of the dynamic between Sally and Leatherface. And, without getting into any spoilers, there are a couple of layers to that and a couple of different scenes where it's just like, come on. That's Laurie Strode and Michael Myers written all over it. And I think that is one of the bigger criticisms rather about this film that I've heard, because I generally on the whole like this movie. It's definitely got faults, but generally speaking, I like it. And it's because I expected what I got in a lot of ways. I kind of, but I'll get into all that later. As far as the comparisons that are going to be drawn here, I think they're warranted. And one of the criticisms that I agree with the most that I've heard people say is, I wanted a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, not a Halloween film, or, a couple of different other films this has been likened to. Where I do understand that criticism, at the same time, I definitely felt like this was more of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film than the last installment in this franchise, Leatherface. I thought that film really didn't feel like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film to me. This one actually feels a whole lot more like one. And if we're going to talk about comparing this with other films in the franchise, I got to say, this one is probably on the higher end for me. The original, Texas Chainsaw 2, the 2003 remake, and this one really are kind of my top, I believe, at this point right now. Which I know a lot of people are going to get pissed off about hearing that, because this has been, even somewhat shockingly to me, a pretty divisive film amongst the horror community, so to speak. But yeah, at the end of the day, there are going to be some comparisons made. I'll say that some of them are fair. I'll say that some of them are maybe unfair, a bit of a stretch. But generally speaking, I think most people would cop to the majority of them because they are kind of obvious. The kills in this film, just absolutely amazing. That's one thing I really got to give props to. Very well done, well executed. Everything as far as the kills go in this film are spot on. I'd actually say Leatherface is a little bit OP in this one, because in this canon of this film, the only other incidents that we've ever seen from Ghostface were the original in 1974. So I'd say he's a little bit more OP in this one than maybe he was even in that one. As far as the gentleman who portrayed him, Mark Burnham, I will say, what little we saw of his face, he did come off like maybe he was a little too young to be playing Leatherface. But once other people's faces went on top, it wasn't that big of a concern. I mean, you got to think Leatherface has got to be around 70 in this film, somewhere in that, maybe late 60s. So maybe that's nitpicking, but that was one thing that struck me as odd kind of toward the beginning of the film. And kind of diving back in here about the kills in this film, shortly after there's a slight face reveal. You do have one of the coolest kills in this entire franchise. Doesn't involve a chainsaw. Go ahead and put that out there. Involving one of the police officers. So yeah, like I said, I'm not going to go into too many spoilers here, but those who have seen it know what I'm talking about. Those who haven't and will, think of me when you see that scene. It's amazing. One of the cooler kills in this entire franchise, no doubt. And like I said, OP Leatherface. The kills are cool and the body count is high. Let's go ahead and throw that out there too. This is a classic slasher film in the sense of a body count. It is up there. We're talking Michael Myers Halloween kills numbers here, which once again I'm comparing it to not just 2018's Halloween, but also now Halloween kills. So yes, these comparisons are going to be made. It's unavoidable. But I got to tell you, I always talk about how I kind of, wish this would have been a good entry in the franchise. I think overall it really is. It's definitely better than Leatherface from 2017, the last entry. I think it's definitely better than Texas Chainsaw 3D. Honestly, I think considering it has really cool kills, it maybe even be better than Texas Chainsaw the beginning, because the kills are really the one thing I hold up about that film. But I think this one has more of a total package. So like I said, even though it's a guilty pleasure of mine, it is better than Texas Chainsaw the beginning as well. I mean, that's a bad movie. I just enjoy it for my own personal reasons. So this one ranks pretty high for me in the franchise. I think, I've heard people mention some issues in the third act. I didn't really take umbrage with the third act the way a lot of people have reviewed this film have talked about. I think maybe it kind of goes into my issue earlier about the Sally character. But I think overall the third act is pretty well done. Maybe it stretches a little bit too far on certain aspects and cliches of the killer. Once again, not going in any giant spoiler territory here. But I do think that it's a pretty cool film because there's a message kind of set up between Sally and one of the new characters that comes to fruition at the conclusion of the film. And I really like that. I really dug the way they foreshadowed that, and it was almost a passing of the torch moment, and exactly what was said comes to fruition. I love the ending to this thing. I absolutely not going to go into any spoiler territory here, obviously, but I loved it. There's a cool gag with autopilot. We'll just say that. That's as much as I'm going to say about the ending of this film. But I did really enjoy it. And at the end of the day, here's the thing. There's a lot of people who are talking about they hated this movie, it was garbage, blah, blah, blah. Of course, there's the woke camp, trashing on it, shitting all over it for whatever reason. And then, of course, you have, your people who I guess expected a Oscar-worthy film when they sat down to watch something called Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, I don't know what the fuck you were looking for. I think my point is this. If you know what the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is, and you sit down and you watch this film, it really just does feel like an updated version of what you kind of expect from the franchise to a degree, with some elements sprinkled in from other slasher, just elements in general from the slasher genre. I'd say that's really what this thing is at the end of the day. I think if you're a slasher fan, just in general, if you really just try to put all of your little nitpicks aside, which I have some too, and just sit back, you probably will enjoy this film. It's a good slasher flick. And in my opinion, it's a good entry into the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Like I said earlier, it's definitely on my more positive side of the franchise. Maybe even the top 4, I'd say. So, it's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre flick. If you're looking for, something to blow your mind, I don't know why you would come to this. It's fun. It's not supposed to be the absolute greatest filmmaking experience of your life, but it's supposed to be fun. And I think the fact that the cinematography is so well done, and I think that the score behind this film was well done, and there's just so many Easter eggs, as far as the franchise itself goes in it. Maybe not so much as say for a Scream, but there are things there. There's that one poster board, which also, by the way, heavily reminded me of the intro to Halloween H2O. Not to shit on this movie anymore about Halloween references, but that definitely did seem to be there. So yeah, I guess at the end of the day, it is a fun, entertaining entry into the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. On the whole, I enjoyed it. It does have some issues that I've discussed in this review, but overall, it's way better than what I honestly anticipated this film would be. And at the end of the day, like I said, it's just fun. It's a good time, especially if you're a slasher fan. I think you'll definitely enjoy this film. So, and also it's on Netflix. You don't have to leave the house. You don't have to, go out into the germ-filled world. You can watch it right there in the comfort of your own home on Netflix. And so I would say, does Bran think I should watch this film? You know what? I think you should. I think it's a good time. Hey, it's still the weekend. sit on the couch, your comfy chair, whatever it may be. Check it out. It's a fun film, and if you're a fan of slasher films, you'll like it. And, if you're a fan of the franchise, you'll be in one of two camps. You decide. All right, so with that said, let me know what you all thought about this film. If you have seen it, in the comment section down below. Try to keep it spoiler-free for the most part. Respect those who haven't seen it yet. And I guess while you're there, leave a like if you've enjoyed this video. Dislike it if you haven't. No one's going to see it. Ha, fuck you. And check the description section with a link to my Twitter or a link to further support this channel if you enjoy what I do here at Bloody Breakdown. So, I'm Bran, and you've just got the Bloody Breakdown on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.